All right, I'm not saying I recorded the whole video beforehand without plugging in my mic, but okay, hello, my name's Addy. I'm a photographer and filmmaker. I'm not a YouTuber. I just thought I'd share my knowledge of the Sony a6500. So a little background about me. I've had this camera, I guess about 2 years now. I bought it on B&H with a 50-1.8 Sony lens for like 1,200 bucks for both of them, I think. Also, I mainly do video. I do a little bit of photo, but most of my work is videography, which is the main reason I bought the camera, because of its video capabilities. So this video is not gonna be a general overview about all the specs and how to use it. You can go Google that or look at the million other videos on YouTube. This is just gonna be my experience, some practical knowledge, and also I'm gonna talk a little bit about the main problems other people will say about the camera. Also, all the footage and images you see in this video are from my Sony, probably with a Sony lens too. Okay, so the number one thing you'll hear people complain with about this camera is the battery life, and they'll say that the battery life sucks. And the battery life isn't great, that's absolutely true, especially compared to newer Sony cameras that have just the bigger battery. However, to that I say, just buy some more batteries. For me, it's just not that big of a deal to just take a battery out and put another battery in. I've never had it just completely shut off in the middle of a shoot because of the battery life, because I just look at what the batteries have. Okay, another thing you'll hear people say is that it overheats a lot. I have never had this camera overheat, and I really put it through some physical extremes. I shot a music video in Valencia, Spain last summer. It was very hot. But the camera was fine. I've never had this thing overheat, even shooting 4K for prolonged periods of time. So don't worry about that. Okay, so some things I like about this camera. Number one, it's so small. And at first, I really didn't think I'd like that. I came from a Canon T5i, which is not a huge camera, but it is at least a little beefy. It's a Canon. And so going to this, I was like, I'm gonna look like such a nerd. I have this small ass camera. However, now I love that because it's super light, really easy to pack. You can practically fit it in your pocket, which is really cool, especially for music festivals. Not that those are happening now. Nonetheless, I like the smallness. Another thing that's often overlooked is that the 4K files are really small, or not really small, but they're good sizes. They don't take up a huge amount of space, even though the image is super crisp. So that's just kind of an added perk. Another cool thing that is kind of a double-edged sword though is that Sony cameras let you have apps. So with a lot of cameras, they have just a built-in time-lapse feature, especially with Canon cameras. With Sony cameras, that's not the case. You have to buy an app from the Sony App Store. Time-lapse app is like 10 bucks, but it's pretty neat and works pretty well. But you can also buy other apps. I just had the time-lapse one because that's all I use. But investigate and buy some more things. So that's kind of cool. Another thing about this camera that some people say is silly, but I think it's cool, is that it shoots log. And if you don't know what log is, I don't have a video on it and I'm not gonna explain it right now. You can just go learn that on your own. Nonetheless, a lot of people say that a camera like the a6500 doesn't really need to shoot log. That's kind of reserved for higher end cine cameras. To that I say, you're an idiot. Sure, it might not be the best mathematical interpretation of light as other cameras, and it's really just trying to pack this super cool feature into this small camera. But if you're thinking of buying a Sony a6500, you probably don't know what log is. Even though maybe it's not the best, although it's still really good. The log features is really good. S-Log2 and S-Log3 perform very well. So even if it's not the best, you can still learn a lot. Okay, some things I don't like. Number one, I've never been too happy with Sony's color science in general. However, that shouldn't stop me from buying this camera. It still looks really good. I just think Canon, even Canon lenses just process and interpret color better, but whatever, who cares? It's pretty good. One thing that's so annoying is that it doesn't have a headphone jack. I cannot tell you how many times I've showed up somewhere ready to plug my headphones in and listen to the sound, and there's nowhere to plug them in. Obviously, that shouldn't stop you from buying this camera. It's just fucking annoying. Another thing that you really don't understand until you use it a lot is that oftentimes it's too light for gimbals. Especially gimbals like the Ronin M. So you put this thing on the M with like just a small prime 35 or 50, the Ronin doesn't know what to do a lot of times, even though it's calibrated. It's able to balance it and the motors work, but oftentimes you'll get a lot of shake and a lot of movement if you're really moving the thing around. So just something to keep in mind. I thought my Ronin was broken, but then I realized, like, wait, this camera's so light and this thing's supposed to hold a bit of weight. It should work fine on other gimbals like the S or just other single stand monopod gimbals things. So don't worry about that, especially if it has a big lens on it. You'll probably be all right. I will also say the flash on this camera is a joke. It's so small and just super dinky and just terrible. So if you're a photographer and you need a flash, either buy another flash or get a different camera. If you have a big lens on it, like the Sony 24-70 2.8, which is what I'm shooting this video on now, and you are taking a photo with the flash, you will have a huge dark spot in the middle of your image because the lens is just blocking the light from the flash. But if you're watching this video or considering purchasing this camera, you probably mostly do video stuff, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Oh, another thing is the crop. I don't care about crop camera. I don't care about full frame. If you're vlogging, maybe you want full frame, but it just doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. And I think that's really all I have to say about this camera. Overall, I've loved this thing. I've had it, I guess, going on 2 years, and it's never caused me any problems. It's a really great camera to learn on, or, well, not learn on initially, but maybe it's your second camera. Or if you're just getting into video, I highly recommend this camera. And other just Sony cameras in general. Okay, last thing, obviously it's 2020 and other cameras have come out in the same series, like the 6400 and the 6600. The 6600 especially really kind of outpaces this camera. One, because of battery life, and two, the autofocus is a little better. But I guess it's like $1,300 or $1,400 now though. So if you have the money, sure, great, do it. But honestly, I'd recommend getting the a6500 and then getting a decent lens or saving up for, you know, a good lens. Okay, hopefully this video was kind of helpful, and I think that's all I have to say. Done.